The sport was actually invented for cricketers to stay healthy and fit over the off season.
Oh,
Yep, that was one of
wow.
the reasons why the sport was invented. In fact, actually, funny fact,
Okay.
Australian rules football is actually older than baseball.
Is I saw what so I've seen that the AFL the league itself in Australia was made in 1897, correct?
Yep.
And
Well, it started off as what they called the VFL, which is the
mm-hmm.
Victorian Football League, which
Mm,
is where Melbourne is,
okay.
because basically the easiest way to equivalent it is Melbourne has 10 teams in Victoria. Basically, Melbourne's got 10 teams in one little area.
Okay.
There's 8 other teams spread then out through the rest of the country. There's two in South Australia, which is
Mm-hmm.
the Adelaide teams, Adelaide and Port Adelaide.
Mm-hmm.
You have your Perth teams, which are in Western Australia, which is West Coast and Fremantle.
Yep.
You have Queensland, which is Brisbane and the Gold Coast, and then New South Wales, which is Sydney, GWS, and Sydney. So, but then the other 10 teams are all in Victoria, basically all within about an hour and a half of Melbourne.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
so, so that's the reason why the sport at the start was
Mm-hmm.
called the VFL, the Victorian Football League. And then eventually, I think it was in the mid 80s, they added West Coast. Sydney actually started off in South Melbourne and then moved up
Hmm.
to New South Wales because they wanted to expand it, because New South Wales and Queensland are
Mm-hmm.
primary rugby area of Australia.
Yep.
So they're not big with AFL. They like it,
Mm-hmm.
but it's it's kind of like lacrosse in the East Coast compared to like the West Coast.
Okay, that
There's a
makes a lot of
ton
sense.
of
Mm-hmm.
there's a ton of lacrosse in the East Coast.
Yeah.
There's some lacrosse in the West Coast, but
Mm-hmm.
not nearly as strong.
Yeah.
But that's how kind of nutty Victoria is. Victoria is football. It is AFL. It is Aussie rules. There are teams everywhere. There are local teams. I mean, basically like bear league teams everywhere in Victoria. South Australia, Western Australia are pretty big too, but Queensland and New South Wales, they're
Mm-hmm.
rugby. They're rugby.
Rugby.
Rugby
Yeah.
union, rugby league, which are the two different codes that they have, which don't get me started in trying to explain that shit.
We can just stay away from that for a second. But with part of this, so we're kind of covering some Australian football with like kind of the basic rules of field size, which is huge,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of the things like so. We're lucky with this kind of layout because you're the expert in the room right now, whereas I'm the newcomer. I'm still trying to pick it
Mm-hmm.
up. I've been following the sport for probably about a couple months now. What
Mm-hmm.
really got me hooked is so to get me into like kind of first was rugby. I get started watching
Mm-hmm.
rugby in high school, tried to get a little bit more, but then footy caught my eye a couple months ago. With shout out to Pat McAfee because he had on
Mm-hmm.
the 6'10" American that has taken the AFL by storm,
Mason Cox.
Mason Cox. Yeah.
Yep, Mason
So.
Cox. And here's another funny fact. His two brothers
Mhm.
are actually older than him. They play in the USAFL right now. One plays in Austin, and the other plays in Seattle.
Wow. Well, shoot.
Yep,
Okay, so if you're a fan of Mason Cox, AFL and watch the US AFL, please.
yep. If you get into Mason Cox, his one brother plays for Austin, which
Mm-hmm.
literally they are the best team in the country. Austin has won 5 of the last 6 Division 1 championships, which is the best
Mm-hmm.
division in the country.
Okay.
They are elite.
So now, since we're on, let's explain a little bit. So we have the league in Australia is the Australian Football League, the AFL. But
Yep.
over here in the United States now, or for a little bit now, we have the USAFL, the United States Australian Football League.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of like let's try and catch on a little bit. So can we talk about like when did this league start? Started in the 90s, correct?
Yep. 1999. It was started by, I can't remember his full name, but his nickname's Plugger, and he's an
Plugger.
Australian who, yeah, he wanted to find a way to expand Aussie rules
Mm-hmm.
into this country. He was kind of the founder of some of the first clubs, which were in kind of the Ohio Valley area,
Okay.
Louisville, Indianapolis, Cincinnati. Those, I mean, some of the older teams are there. I know San Diego's team started in and around that time, but there's teams across the country. There, last time I checked, There's 46 clubs throughout the country, and at least 8 what we would call developmental clubs.
Mm-hmm.
They're recognized by the USAFL, but they're not like full-fledged clubs. They're
Okay.
kind of like, we've got a name, we're getting started, but we haven't really had that official game yet. So they're
Mm-hmm.
kind of what we would consider development clubs, and they are scattered everywhere. I mean, literally, the easiest way to say it is there's a team in Maine, there's a team in Hawaii, and everything in between.
Mhm. Well, that was kind of crazy to me. So we got in contact because pretty much I quoted a tweet on our Twitter. I'll shout that out real quick at Fourth Long Radio. And of course, we can follow the USAFL at USAFL 1999, 1997.
Yep.
USAFL 1997. They're on Twitter and Instagram as well. Also, website usafl.com. But I kind of stumbled upon you guys because I got reached out first by the Des Moines team, which is the team that you are the head coach of.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get into that in a sec, but I just quoted a tweet about the AFL, like from an AFL tweet saying that's definitely one of the most underrated sports in the world, without a doubt. Um, and then we kind of caught on with this. You guys do a good job with the marketing. We're talking how you try to find almost any tweet about the AFL and just kind of try to reach out and plug your stuff, which is not bad because you're still, I mean, you've been around for a little bit. You have teams everywhere, but you're still also kind of a growing league, which is crazy to me because I've never heard of you guys. Like, I'll be honest, never heard of you guys until you reached out to me. But then I started to look into it, and I swear, I was blown away with how many teams you guys have in your or how many clubs you guys have, excuse me, in your league and how established you were.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy. Just I think we're kind of that hidden secret. We're kind of like the old like going off the movie where it's kind of like Fight Club. It's like
Mm-hmm.
if you don't know about Fight Club, you don't know about Fight Club. That's kind of the thing about the
Lord, probably.
USAFL
So you guys are
is,
breaking the first rule on your Twitter. Jeez.
yeah, I guess I don't know. It's just kind of interesting because it's one of those where a lot of times a lot of these clubs are started by expats. They're former Australians that happen to be here in the States and they wanted to get a club going
Mm-hmm.
and they decided, hey, let's get a footy club started. And it just kind of expanded from there. That's kind of the nice thing about it. Now, myself and the Des Moines Roosters, we're an oddball team. We were started by 2 guys from Sioux City, Iowa, from the western part of Iowa,
Mm-hmm.
that got into the game in LA, and their father got sick, decided to come back to Des Moines, and conveniently they were like, you know what, let's get a footy team started here. And we're one of the few clubs in the country that have no active Australians playing the game. We are primarily an American team,
Mm.
which is kind of odd
Mm-hmm.
because most of the teams in the league have at least 10, 12, 15 Australians that are pretty regular or at least are around the club a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have that luxury. Unfortunately, I mean, Iowa doesn't have a lot of the things that draw Australians to it. We
But
don't have
not my
mountains.
well,
We don't
Australians
have
don't
ocean.
like planes.
I don't know if it's that. It's just the fact that it's like Australians love to ski.
Mm-hmm.
Australians love to surf.
Yep.
We're in the middle of the country.
Yeah.
We don't have any oceans. We don't have any mountains. I mean, if you're a farmer and you're from Australia, you might find your way here, but whether you're coming here for footy, probably not. So
Right.
so we really are kind of this oddball. We're the smallest metropolitan area that has a team.
Mm-hmm.
Where like I said, we're the only team in the country that is we're like 99.9% American. We've had a couple of Irish guys that joined us because they happened to be in town and caught on, and like Gaelic football
Mm-hmm.
is a lot like Australian football. So they ended up joining us last year. So it's kind of one of those we're kind of the weird oddball cousin of the USAFL because we don't have any Australians.
Mm-hmm. So, let's. I'd like to kind of put into I guess I'll call myself the casual with this one.
Mm-hmm.
Like me and my other guy on the show, usually correspondent Blake Campbell.
Mm-hmm.
He's our little expert. A lot of the terms you throw around is casuals. You know, the filthy casuals. I'll put that in the quotes. So I am more than welcome to take that name right now. So I like to try to explain things from my perspective into like other casuals' perspectives. You know.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Sure.
would say if you've never seen Australian football, I tried to call it a mix between like I guess American football, rugby, maybe a little bit of soccer in there too. it's really this hodgepodge of so many sports that you'd see around the world, which is it's but so exciting though at the same time. Like I swear, the first time you watch a game, the first game I sat down and watched was probably about a month and a half ago, and I was just staring at the screen for about 20 minutes. I had no idea what was going on, but I was loving every second of it.
You're not the only one. For me, most of the time is the first thing when you tell them, it's like, I play Australian rules football, or I coach Australian rules football. Almost the first quote from almost every person I've ever told it was, "Is that rugby?"
Right?
I'm like,
that's what I thought it was.
No, it's not rugby.
Yeah.
I didn't say rugby. Number one. Number two, Aussie rules, the easiest way I felt to describe, and it's kind of the best way I've ever heard it said, is Aussie rules is soccer and rugby had a mutant child. Is the easiest way to describe it, because it's got the full contact of rugby, it's got the big field and the open play of soccer. There's constantly action. Yes, you have the oddball things, like some of the terms that you'll use in it is when you listen to the broadcast, you'll hear them say shepherd all the time. You are legally allowed to help your teammate down the field by basically what I would equivalent to as a basketball box out. As long as you're within 5 meters of the ball, you can legally find an opponent and box them out and keep them from tackling your teammate. So that's called a shepherd.
Okay.
Completely legal. Then you have your volleyball parts where you have your handball, which basically you cannot throw the ball. If you throw the ball, it's a turnover. That's
you like hold the ball and then you hit it, right?
Yep. It's kind of like you're holding the pizza, you're holding the pizza, and then you punch it as hard as you can to your friend or teammate.
We've all done stuff like that. Like, I guess you're holding volleyball, you just punch it and then hit it towards someone. You can't pass it, but you can punch it forward. You can punch it laterally. You can punch it behind you, but it has to be hit. And then
it has to be with a closed fist. It cannot be with an open hand. Yep.
Gotcha. And then
because if you do it with an open hand, they're going to most likely call it a throw, and then that's a turnover as well.
Okay.
So you have to punch it, and you're wanting to punch it on the top part of the ball that gets it the correct spin. Because if you hit it in the bottom, it goes down. It's a lot harder to grab.
Now,
a
lot of
people there. Sorry.
Yeah, you're fine with the ball. Is it similar to? I know it's not rugby. But is the ball similar to maybe the shape in kind of size of a rugby ball?
Yeah, actually, I have one here.
Oh, here we go.
It's just sharing. Okay. Now, basically, the easiest way I tell most people is if you look at it and look at the nose of the ball, unlike the NFL and college football, you have that angled point, so it's easier to throw. With this, it's more rounded because it's more done for kicking.
Yeah.
So, and it's a little bit bigger than American football.
Now, are there laces on it, or is there no laces?
Yep. So it holds the bladder. Yep.
Some laces at the top. So it's like just a big football that's not textured and a little more dull.
Yeah, it's more of it's very smooth because with all the information that they have on it, they lacquer on it. And this is actually a special one that we got a few years ago. It's kind of commemorating our combination with Australia for 100-year, what we call the mateship game.
Oh, nice!
And the team happened to get it, so I always kind of keep this one. This is one of our better balls, so I keep that one.
Now, another thing with the rules is one of the things that really catches you off guard when you first tune into a game is almost every single kind of field in this kind of sport, it's a rectangle, but not in Aussie rules football. It's a oval.
Yep. So it is basically one giant circle with a couple of flattened ends for the goals. But other than that, I mean, like I said, it was basically invented to keep cricketers healthy in the off season, which is basically our summertime, their winter, since cricket is played in their summertime.
Okay.
And and basically the field is pretty simple. It's one giant oval, and then on the ends of each field are 4 goalposts, 2 tall in the center and 2 short on the outside. And that's how you score is you maneuver the ball either kicking or handballing it down, and then you have to kick the ball through the goalposts to score points. If you kick the ball without it being touched by anybody between the 2 tall posts, it's 6 points. And then the fun part, a lot of Americans love is the goal judges. Whenever they score a goal, they do the rootin' tootin' finger guns.
Those are
that's one of.
I love it so much. Every time it's just boom.
And if it does it behind, it's only 1. So, but they still do it even in on the behind. On the behind, he does 1, but on a goal, he does 2. And it's the joke amongst most of us in USAFL is one of the things that gets a lot of fans is the goal judges rootin' tootin' finger guns when he does that. And some of them really get into it.
Now, is that an official name? Is that what is officially called as a rootin' finger guns?
Nah, it's just kind of the fun little. It's just kind of the fun little thing most of us throw into it
I
because
love
that's
it
what
so
it looks
much.
like. It looks like a couple of guys drawing their guns.
Right. My
It's
favorite part is
comical.
that they go like really into it, but their face is super serious about it.
Yep. Well, and the other thing is, if you ever go online and watch some of the older games from like the '80s,
Hmm.
they wore like the giant long billed caps that go all the way around,
Yeah.
trench coats.
Yeah, they looked super like I don't know what better word to describe it besides dapper. They looked
Oh yeah,
very nice, and they
yeah,
looked even better when throwing the finger guns with that one. That's always
yep.
good.
And,
But you said the middle
oh yeah,
goalpost untouched is 6 points. The
yep.
two outer smaller ones are 1 point each.
In
Correct.
between one tall, one short, one,
Hmm.
and then there's a few little oddball twists to this. Like
Okay.
in most of our games, like if you go in soccer and you shoot it on goal and it bounces off the goalpost, it's still in play as long as it stays in the field of play.
Hmm.
For Aussie rules, if that ball hits the goalpost, play stops,
Mm.
and if it hits the tall goalpost, it's 1 point. If
Okay.
it hits the outside behind points, here's where it gets a little odd. If it
Mm.
hits the outside behind post on the full or in the air,
Hmm.
it is actually called out on the full, which is a turnover, and the other team, the team that didn't kick it, now
Hmm.
gets the ball.
Now, where do they get that ball at?
They would get that ball right next to that post, just on the inside of the goalpost,
Okay.
the outside of the goalpost. So it'd be like, here's the goalpost,
Hmm.
here's kind of the behind zone.
Hmm.
They would give the free kick on the outside of the goalposts.
Okay. Now, free kicks
So
also happen when a ball is either kicked or passed or handballed 15 meters down the field.
only kicked,
Only
only
kicked.
kicked.
Okay.
Yep, and that's called a mark.
It's
Yep,
called
that's
the
called a
mark.
mark.
So, and
That's called a mark.
with the mark, one of my favorite terms is one that you, like, I knew what it was. I knew what the action was, but I didn't know the term. But one of my favorite terms is specky mark, which is
The
except
specky.
with his, it's pretty much shortened for spectacular mark. And
Mm-hmm.
so, can we explain what the mark is? Can we break that down?
Um, like I said, the mark is basically if you kick pass to a teammate, as long as it goes 15 meters or about 16 yards per
Hmm.
se, something a little bit more like any American football, like, 16 yards basically. If
Hmm.
you kick pass to a teammate in the air and they catch it, they then get a free kick there. The opponent cannot tackle them. The opponent has to stand where that ball was caught. You can back up as far as you want, but you've got 10 seconds to now get rid or pass the ball.
Mm.
After 10 seconds, if you haven't done anything and the referee says, well, I'm tired of this, he yells, play on as loud as he can, and now the tackler can come tackle you. You have to get rid of the ball.
Hmm.
So that's kind of that. Specky mark, prototypical Australians, they love to cut things in half and just throw an IE on it. It's short for spectacular mark. They also use words called a hanger, or can't remember. There's one other one that they say is a screamer.
Screamer.
Are the three different? Yep, screamer are the three different terms that they use for that. And basically, what that is you are perfectly legal as long as you are playing the football
Mm.
to jump on somebody's back to catch the ball.
Now that is
Perfectly legal.
that's one of the craziest plays. I think that's probably one of the more, I guess, shocking things to see as a new fan to it, because you'll see guys fully grown, like these are pretty big people. Their athletes are large, but you'll see a guy jump onto another guy's shoulders and catch the ball over him, and take these huge hits too. Especially like some of these guys really sacrifice themselves when going out for the ball.
Yeah, and it's kind of one of those. It takes a lot of practice. They actually have specifically made kind of like tackling dummies
Hmm.
to let these guys practice, but they are literally insane. Like I actually one time tried it, and it's so hard to time because you have to jump at just the right time. Because if you jump and you run into somebody and you don't play the ball at all, like you don't touch it, you don't come close, that's a turnover, and the person who you just jumped on, it's their free kick now. They call it an unrealistic attempt.
Okay.
You have to be able to play the ball. So if you jump up and you like go to grab it and it bounces off your hands, bounces away, it doesn't matter if you knock that guy out. Perfectly legal. And unfortunately, I know it's the Australians. They do everything in an extreme. It's kind
Aussies
of
are
funny,
awesome, man.
but I've literally seen games where a guy will get a knee right in the back of the skull
Hmm.
as a guy's taking a specky on top of him, and that guy is out, and they have to cart him off, and another guy just comes right back in. Not a problem. Or I've even seen those guys. They'll get up. They're kind of wobbly.
Hmm.
They'll come off. 15 minutes later, they're back on. I mean, the
Well,
Aussies are kind of nuts.
well, that part of the world, if I want to just group in Aussies and Kiwis and with New Zealanders too, there's some crazy people. Like if I know it's rugby, but their athletes are crazy. Like I saw a story, a dude got a fat, like giant cut on his quad. He
Mm-hmm.
himself went to the sideline, stitched it up, and then went back in the same game.
Mm-hmm.
So those Aussies and Kiwis too, they are crazy.
And the crazy part about it is they don't like each other.
No, they well
It
one of
is
the
quite
best
it is very
sporting
quite interesting to hear
rivalries,
them.
right? Well, I would say
Yeah,
the easily one of the best sporting rivalries in the world is in rugby. It's the Australian rugby team and the New Zealand All Blacks.
the Wallabies and the All Blacks. Yep, that's in rugby union is where they get usually play some of their best games. Yeah,
Hmm.
those are some of the good ones. That and South Africa and
Hmm.
the in the Tri Nations when they play each other is always had some fun rugby to watch.
Now, even there's a little bit of hatred between them. Do we see very many Kiwis playing in the AFL?
Not many. It's unfortunately with the Australians sometimes that they're very much protective of their game.
Mm.
Um, like Mason Cox when he went down there, I mean, literally, it was just kind of a shot in the dark for
Yeah.
him. And he did his first handball, and there's actually a quote. There's a documentary that's actually on YouTube. It's quite interesting. You
Okay.
hear Buckley, their coach, even say, he says his first handball went 3 feet over his head and another 5 feet behind him. And he's like, if this is what we're starting off with, I'm not sure this is going to work. And he continued to play in kind of the lower leagues. And when he first started making it up, he could not get his footing in the league.
Hmm.
And then 2017 happens, and he goes absolutely bananas in a semifinal, and he's taking hangers, he's kicking goals to the point where Collingwood fans are chanting USA in the stands. You can literally, like, if you ever get a chance to go and watch USAFL,
Hmm.
watch that game, because in that quarter, literally, the announcer on the sidelines is literally saying it. They are chanting USA, and there's a USA flag behind one of the goals
Man,
being waved each and every time he scores. It is
that's wild.
insane.
That's
Yep.
that. Yeah, I have to go watch that as soon as we're done here. I guess.
Yeah. I think I could probably YouTube you the
Oh,
link
cool. If
to
you link
that
that to
game.
me, I'll link that in this stuff too, so all of you guys listening can go check that out because man, I get a little goosebumps just by hearing about that. If
Oh
we
yeah,
want
and
to
it's
talk about the fans for a second, Australian fans are crazy and everything, but
mhm,
they love their AFL. Man, right now their stadiums are on like 25% capacity, but they still
mhm.
get loud. And then I've watched games with full crowds, and it's roaring. It sounds like I guess for the American or for like my typical viewer, watching a really good college game like the teams like Ohio State, Wisconsin, Virginia Tech, those kind of fans, but like another tier above that. They're
Well, the other
between
thing. Go
yeah,
ahead. I'm sorry.
it's like between the flag waving, the chanting, just the constant screaming. It's awesome.
Well, the biggest difference I think between kind of the USA fan and the Australian fan, and it's kind of the same thing with Europe a little bit too, is that with USA we're used to an owner. We're used to a $1 billion guy throwing
Hmm.
down a ton of money to be able to do everything.
Hmm.
In Australia, it's a little bit different. They have what they call memberships.
Hmm.
So because you're a fan of a team, you can literally, and even us in the international realm,
Hmm.
if you go on their websites, any of the teams, like if you decide to be like you said, you're really looking at kind of supporting GWS.
Oh
And
yeah,
if you go
go
on
Giants.
GWS's website, you can actually find international memberships. You pay a little bit of money,
Hmm.
but you get like a scarf, you get a membership tag, you get all this cool stuff. Like I'm a member of the Sydney Swan.
Hmm.
I have been a member since 2016 and have never regretted it. I get a hat every year. I get an interactive, like a card, different stuff like that. There's an app where I
Uh-huh.
can actually watch the games live in case they're not on TV. Like there for a while before we had all this,
Mm-hmm.
it's called the Watch AFL app.
Yep.
And connected to this international membership, I then get a code and then I get that app
And that's
as well.
included. Oh, wow.
Yes. Yes. So I can literally watch the games anytime I want. It is on demand.
Mm-hmm.
So like this morning my Swans played at 2:30, but if I didn't decide to feel like waking up, I
Uh-huh.
could wait until this afternoon and watch the entire game in its entirety without commercials anytime I
Wow.
want. Yep.
Well, now
And it
once
has the entire
what,
season.
once that paycheck hits tomorrow morning, I might have a decision to make.
And each team's different. Some
Uh-huh.
teams, mine was the altogether because it paid for the Watch AFL app and then
Mm-hmm.
the membership as well. I got a hat, a scarf. One year I got a cooler,
Oh.
like a mini cooler. Yeah, it was awesome. It has membership. I get a hat that has a
Uh-huh.
membership tag on the side, which is awesome. I got a keychain. You get a keychain. Um, you get like a special magazine. You get a special marker that
Mm-hmm.
kind of says your name on it with your membership.
Okay.
And with some of them, after a certain amount of years, you get like certificates and different stuff like that. And then I know for at least with the Swans, there's what they call the Swan Shop, and
Mm-hmm.
I get 10% off merchandise as a member.
Wow. That's a
So
good deal.
exactly. Now it costs a little bit to
Mm-hmm.
ship. I
You know,
actually
it's only
bought
coming
some
from
stuff.
Australia, right?
Yeah, let's just say I paid $60 just to have it shipped here, but I spent enough. It was kind of worth it, and
Mm-hmm.
with the exchange rate, I got a lot of stuff
Oh yeah,
for
the US dollar
not a
is
lot of money.
stronger than the Australian. Was it the Australian dollar?
Yep, yep, it's the Australian dollar. Yeah, it
Oh.
was the last time when I purchased. Like I said, I kind of splurged on myself for my birthday.
Oh,
I
there's
bought
nothing
about
wrong with that at all.
well, especially when you pay 400 about in Aussie dollars, I paid $430. In American dollars, I
Mm-hmm.
paid just under 275.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yep, and I got it shipped, right here, and it came within about a week and a half. So it was, I have several T-shirts. I got
Mm-hmm.
like a sweatshirt, a beanie. I got all sorts of
Dude, you're one
yeah.
hell of an ad campaign for the AFL. They need to hire you real quick for the marketing.
Well, and the funny thing is, actually used the Rooster page to actually like help another person get a membership. There's a one person that I ran into that turned into a massive Geelong Cats fan,
Mm-hmm.
and I had actually communicated with him with the Twitter app, and I'm like, hey, did you know that there's international memberships where you can get like stuff for free? Well, not
Mm-hmm.
for free, but
Yeah.
you pay your membership and you get it. And all of a sudden, I saw like the last couple of weeks, he got his membership pack in the mail. He's got like a Geelong scarf and everything.
Ooh. And those
Yep.
scarves are
So,
pretty nice too.
oh yeah, and they're really cool. Just the cool little things that they
Yeah.
do, and I think it's a little bit different. Like the memberships there, they
Mm-hmm.
actually get like tickets to the game. Like
Yeah.
you pay like a certain amount of money,
So
and you get a guaranteed ticket.
it's almost like a season ticket holder, but
Mhm.
in like for the NFL or for most season places, you'll get like a couple things, but it's really mostly just that ticket. But they really take it a step up. So hey, NFL,
Mhm.
NBA, MLB, NHL, you guys might have to step it up a little bit, right?
It's absolutely awesome. But
That's awesome.
basically, those memberships
Mm-hmm.
pay the clubs, like they pay for the players.
Mm-hmm.
They pay for literally. It is the fans own the team, kind of.
So
I mean,
it's
that's why
almost like the Green Bay Packers, how they don't have an
basically
actual owner. It's
exactly.
technically owned by the public, but
Yep,
that's
and that
every team.
yep. And I mean, they're still subsidized by the league. I mean, the
Yeah,
league makes a ton of money. I mean, the one thing
of
about the
course.
Watch AFL app, and then they're run by free to air TV. There are a couple of news stations that free to air their games, and then there's Fox Footy,
Mm-hmm.
which is basically their version of Fox Sports
Yep.
here in the States, and they play all the footy games. So they get some pretty good revenue out of that. And
Mm-hmm.
right now with all
Well,
the
their
COVID
stadiums
issues,
must be huge. So like, I get how much do you think a full capacity crowd is like the average stadium? How many
it,
people?
it, it depends on the stadium. The MCG can hold up to 100,000 people.
Wow.
Yep.
And who plays
Up
there?
that is in Victoria.
Okay.
That's in Melbourne,
Mm-hmm.
and that's pretty much where Richmond, Melbourne, St. Kilda. Well, St. Kilda actually plays at what they call Marvel Stadium now. Yeah, Disney
Oh,
kind of.
that's right. Yeah, I've
Yeah,
seen that.
yeah, it's called Marvel Stadium
Yeah, I've
in
seen that
Melbourne.
for
Yep,
UFC event was
yep,
hosted in the Marvel Arena or Stadium, one of them two.
yep. It was Etihad, and then kind of Marvel bought it,
Mm-hmm.
and now Marvel. So it's got like all sorts of superheroes everywhere. But those are the two main stadiums
Mm-hmm.
in Victoria.
So not
Then you
every team
have
has their own stadium,
no,
like a
not
football
the
team here in
Melbourne
the
teams.
States does. Okay.
Yeah, not the Melbourne teams. The outer state teams. South Australia, which has both Adelaide teams, they both play in the same place. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like New York Giants, New York Jets. They both play at Giant Stadium. That's Adelaide. The Adelaide Oval holds 55,000,
Okay.
and that's for Port and Adelaide.
Mm-hmm.
There's Optus Stadium, which is really brand new. It's only like 4 years old. It holds almost 70,000,
Mm.
and that's the Western Australian teams of West Coast and Fremantle.
Okay.
Then you have Gold Coast, which is like 35,000, and that they only have Gold Coast. Brisbane plays at what they call the GABA,
Mm-hmm.
and that's I think another 50. And then you have Metricon Stadium, which is where your GWS Giants play, and then the Sydney Cricket Ground, which the SCG, which is where Sydney plays,
Mm-hmm.
and that's about another 65. So most of them are at least 40 to 50. So you're talking a good college football size crowd.
Mm-hmm.
The Optus Stadium and then MCG are the two biggest in the country with 65 and then 100,000. That's why every year, normally, when COVID isn't going absolutely bonkers, normally the grand final, or basically what the easiest way to equivalent is the Super Bowl of Australia, is
Mm-hmm.
the AFL grand final. Every year it is played at the MCG, and it is sold out every year. You
Shocker.
cannot find a ticket.
Mm-hmm. Like the
Oh,
Super Bowl, I guess, where it's like sold out pretty much for the next
yeah.
50 years.
Yep, basically almost 100,000 people almost every year at the grand final, and like I said, it's
That's
literally
awesome.
like our Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
But the only difference is, unlike our Super Bowl, that it moves around. Theirs is it's there. Now
It's always
this
there.
year, not so much. Victoria is literally ravaged right now with COVID. So right now, the Queensland government is keeping the league alive. Unfortunately, with Victoria absolutely ravaged, all
Yeah.
the teams have basically been shipped up to Queensland or Western Australia.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically, they're literally playing all the games in either the GABA in Brisbane, at Metricon Stadium in the Gold Coast, or in Optus Stadium out in the West Coast. So we're crossing our fingers right now that none of those states get any issues, or then the season's over.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the scary part. And it's also the reason why last Thursday started 22 consecutive days where there'll be at least one game.
Yeah, they've been promoting the hell out of that over on on their Twitter. And then part of that, so they call kind of like rounds. They have like rounds for the games. Can we explain that a little bit? Because it throws some people off.
Yeah, it's just basically it's switch round with like NFL's week. That's basically all it is. They just use a different word. That's basically all it is. The round is who you play that particular weekend. Now, normally, in a normal circumstance, they play Thursday to Sunday. So that's when all the games are. Again, with COVID kind of ravaging and only having so many grounds and so many places they can play, that's why they're trying to compress everything in case there's any issues. If there is any kind of outbreak, we've crossed our fingers. There's only been one, but we're really thinking it was a false positive with Essendon. It was about 3 weeks ago. Connor McKenna, who's actually Irish, his test came up positive. So they were supposed to play Melbourne that day or the day after. So they canceled the game, and they were like trying to contact trace and do everything. So basically they shut those two teams have actually played one last game because of that. But then 2 days later, they retested Connor McKenna again, and he was clean. Nothing. So there's a lot of people there for a while that think they probably had a false positive, which is great, because then that means they have not had a single positive test yet in the entire AFL.
Dang, they're doing a really good job with that. Like, yes,
the only
I'll knock on wood right now. The NHL is also doing a great job with that too.
The only problem with that though is that now they've moved everybody out of Melbourne, and a lot of the family members moved up, and they're having a lot of problems with breaches. They're having people like basically they kind of have them on lockdown. They don't want them going out and
Yeah,
risking
so they pretty much
anything.
have a bubble there too.
It kind of
It's
not.
almost like
Yeah.
they're almost in the NHL NBA stuff where there's a legit bubble, and then
Mhm.
almost they're like in between that and the MLB how they're trying to get people to stay home, but
Mhm.
unless you're the St. Louis Cardinals, Miami Marlins, you go to the casinos and strip clubs. So.
Well, and the other thing too is, as you kind of saw watching some of the games, is South Australia, Western Australia, and the new and the Northern Territories, which
Mhm,
actually doesn't have a team,
mhm,
they have not had any cases in over a month,
mhm,
so they're clean.
mhm.
The problem is their governments are like, yeah, we're not taking any risk, so they're like, what they're basically doing is they're sending teams into Western Australia and they are quarantining for 2 weeks.
Mhm.
So they're basically playing one game with two teams that are quarantined, where no fans can be in the stands. The only people that can be in there are members of the staff.
Mhm.
And then once they've done the quarantine week, then the next week, then fans can come to the games. And usually that's when they play the Western Australian teams.
Okay.
Like Sydney and GWS will
Mhm.
actually play each other in Western Australia I think it's next Thursday,
Mm.
and there will be no fans in the stands.
Mhm.
But then GWS will play West Coast, and Sydney will play Fremantle, and in both of those games, fans will then be allowed into the stands. So they are really, really, really stringent. I mean, they literally fined at least four clubs in the last week up to $35,000 or more
Mhm.
for breaches. Like one
Dang.
wife of one player went to a spa to get like her hair done.
Mhm.
She got literally the club got fined $35,000 because she did that, and the only reason they found out is she put it on Snapchat.
Oh my.
Yep, she put it on Snapchat. Somebody found out about it. A journalist put it out there. The
Oh
AFL
boy.
was not happy. They
Yeah.
fined him. Then the crazy part is um, they fired that journalist because he put the person's name, the wife's name, in the article. But people got mad because she put it out herself,
Uh
and
huh.
several other indications that were not connected to the AFL
Uh huh.
had done it as well. So there was
That's
this huge
weird.
uproar, and the guy got his job back.
Uh huh.
But
That's
there's a
crazy.
lot of drama about it. There was
Man,
one I
how
think
do
it
you
was from
stay
North
like up to date on all this stuff that's happening on the other side of the world?
Podcasts
Mhm. Yeah, you
and
got some recommendations?
AFL afl.com.au
Mhm.
is their website. So
Okay.
that's the easiest way to kind of keep track of that. I listen to two podcasts that are actually out of Melbourne. One
Okay.
is their radio show. Like if you do radio shows in the morning, it's talk radio. It's a bunch
Mhm.
of people talking. It's called The Hot Breakfast. It is done by Eddie McGuire, who's actually the president of Collingwood, a former Western Bulldogs player. Oh my God, I can only think of his nickname is Darcy. Is Darce. But basically, they do a morning show, and they do kind of the morning show stuff. They talk about the weather, they talk about what's going on, they'll have
Mhm.
COVID updates, but they almost always during footy season have updates. So they're talking about what's going on
Okay.
and all that. And then I listen to another one that's basically kind of your afternoon drive home. It's called the Rush Hour, and
Mm.
it's your afternoon, and it's
Both
a
shows very
announcer.
appropriately named.
Yes, and both shows are, shall we say, rather lenient on verbiage. So
Mm.
there's the occasional four-letter word that
Mm.
drops out, which are absolutely hilarious, especially in an Australian accent. And
Aussie profanity is easily one of my favorite things to listen to. There's
yeah, and I
there's
can
nothing like it.
send you the links on. I can put it up on Twitter. I
Cool.
can send that to you
I'll,
guys.
I'll
That has
retweet
that
that
has
so everyone
both
could
of
see that.
those. But if you want to hear the Australian accent, you want to kind of hear what they. I mean, and it's
Mhm.
hilarious sometimes to hear them kind of laugh at us here in the States a little
Mhm.
bit. I mean, they take pot shots. It's
Oh yeah.
hilarious,
Well,
even
I
even
love
to
it.
me.
I got lucky, and like one of the ways I kind of got into this sport even more is in my apartment building. So like I'm a student at Boise State University. There is
Hmm.
a student that lives here, did play baseball at Boise State, but he's from Perth, and so
Hmm.
he was giving me a little more into this, and then just talking about like the I guess the insider Aussie stuff and like their kind of jokes and Aussies are funny as hell.
Oh yeah, and they are not. They don't hold back,
No.
but the best thing is that they can give you a ton. They can give you a ton of shit,
Hmm.
but they do it in a manner that is the least bit like aggressive. It
Right?
is purely joking. I mean,
Yes.
my thing is that I listen to so many of them. You start getting some of their slang, and
Hmm.
some of it is comical because I will start using it. Like I'll throw out one here is to whinge, and
To
that is to
whinge.
complain. Like if
Mm.
you like, you'll hear it sometimes. They're like, "Oh, he's just whinging. Will you shut up and stop whinging?" That is to complain.
And no one knows where these words come from. Where's it?
They're just random ones. Like I mean, they're like one of my favorites. Like going to footy, like footy knowledge. You'll
Hmm.
hear this all the time. You listen to it. Is what we call a stiff arm.
Hmm.
They call a don't argue.
Don't argue.
A don't argue. And if you ever watch Richmond, watch Dusty Martin.
Dusty Martin.
He basically looks like if you took a hard rocker, like a death metal heavy rocker,
Yeah.
and made him an Aussie rules football player. He is tattooed everywhere
Uh-huh.
and has a mohawk right down the center of his head.
Hell yes.
And he is one of the best players in the league, bar none. Absolutely insane. And his favorite move is the don't argue.
Don't argue. I love.
He
Well,
loves it.
it feels like the names of some stuff is like stuff you'd say while doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And
Don't
then
argue.
we'll do another one, a fresh airy.
Fresh
Got any
air.
idea what that might be? What is a fresh airy?
I think I might have an idea, but what is it?
A fresh airy is basically, when you play baseball and somebody throws a fastball and you don't even come near it, and you
Yep.
swing right through it.
This is
A fresh airy is like if you did that trying to kick the footy.
so
Like if you try to
a
drop the
whiff.
footy, you try to kick it. Yep, a whiff.
Whiff. So while we're on these, I actually have the you brought your some like we were talking about, but I brought some of my slang and some of this verbiage
Mm-hmm.
and so let's just get into some of this while we're on the topic. So we
Sure.
went over specky mark, which is
Mm-hmm.
all these words are they're fun to say, to be honest.
Oh
Like
yeah.
specky mark, it's fun. A footy is just a really easy way and kind of a fun way to refer to the sport. One of the ones I saw was ball burster. So almost like a massive kick,
There
a
we go.
torpedo punt.
Mhm.
And it travels typically around 70 meters, but it's a ball burster. So
Mhm.
I guess one of the things that I guess we call it, we've heard, throw it back to Pat McAfee. In football, if you hit a banger of a punt, you call it a piss missile.
Mhm.
That's almost like a ball burster.
Yep. And then like some of my favorite ones that I like is a shaka.
Shaka.
A shaka.
So not
It's
not
like
not one of
having
these. Not one of these you
no
throw up.
no. It's a shaka. You're having a shaka of a game. It's a bad game. Like you're having a horrible performance. Like you have not played very well at all. And then I kind of showed you. That's called the footy. You call it the footy or the
Mhm.
Sharon
The
because
Sharon.
that's the name of it. Let's see. A clanger.
Mhm. Clanger. I had that
A,
one. Yeah.
yep.
A
Yep. That
clanger
one's pretty good. A clanger.
is
CLANGR.
yep.
Clanger.
Now the clanger is a unforced air.
Yep. It's
So kind
basic.
of like what
Oh
happens
yeah.
with that?
It's a mess up or a cup, as some would say,
J-
depending on how you want to use it.
Just a
But
bad
it's
play. Just call it a
yep,
clanger.
yep. And then
So like
another
someone goes
one.
up for a specky mark and they miss. Would you call that a clanger?
It depends. I mean, if you make it look good, you're probably not. Like basically, the easiest way is like if you're standing in front of goal and there's no way you should miss, and you kick it out on the full, meaning you completely miss it and
Just
it goes
shank it.
nowhere near. That's a clanger.
I like
In
it.
fact, you could probably, if you go on YouTube, sometimes you can actually find top 10 clangers of the year, and some of them are hilarious. Another good one, kind of going off that, is the Falcon.
Yeah, I saw. This is part of my list. I love the Falcon. So
The
Falcon
Falcon.
is pretty much when you get take a ball right to the noggin.
Yep.
And
Yep.
do we know like why it's called a Falcon? Do Australians get attacked by falcons?
I don't think so. I mean, they're most common ones. If you get attacked by a bird, it's a
like,
magpie,
yeah.
which is the nickname of Collingwood. Is magpies are known to swoop because they defend their nests a lot. So there's constantly videos of magpies like attacking people on bikes and different stuff like
Now,
that.
have you seen magpies attack a footy player on the pitch?
Not really. Most of the times you're going to see birds. You're going to see them in MC. You're going to see the MCG, and you'll get the seagulls
Mm.
or pigeons.
We,
I actually,
mm-hmm.
in one video I saw, Collingwood was playing Richmond, and one of the player goes for the bounce because you have to bounce it after a certain distance, which is
Okay.
quite entertaining
Oh,
sometimes
I've
to do
seen that
that.
where it's like people like you're running. It's like it looks like about
Yep.
5 to 10 meters, and they like it's almost like a dribble. They throw the ball down,
Mm-hmm.
bounce it back to themselves, which
Yep.
probably looks like it takes a lot more skill. They probably make it look really easy.
It takes a lot to master because
Mm-hmm.
unlike a basketball dribble, you don't flex your wrist. You kind of have to flat hand
Mm-hmm.
it because you're shoving the farthest part of the ball away from you
Yep.
to the ground so it'll kick back up
Mm-hmm.
because of the odd shape of the ball. I mean, you can see it like
Mm-hmm.
watching a game. That ball takes some weird bounces
Yeah, it
sometimes.
does.
Like you could
It's
be
like a
running at it. You're
it's like
like,
a
I
football.
got it. And it right turns on you big
Mhm.
time.
See
And
that a lot
that
of football.
happens.
I think like a lot of people like me that play football, we've tried to bounce it to ourselves. It might
Mm-hmm.
be a little harder with the football because it's a lot more sharp, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not easy.
Yeah. No, and then just some of the ones that are a little they don't have any kind of funky one like
Mm-hmm.
a spoil.
A spoil.
Have you heard of a spoil?
I've not heard of a spoil. Is
Okay,
that
a
like when
spoil.
someone kind of ruins a play for someone?
Basically, the easiest way to say that is that when you like pass it to a teammate, like if I try to kick pass it to a teammate
Mm-hmm.
and his defender comes in and fists it away so you can't catch it and mark
Mm.
it, that's called a spoil. That's spoiling the mark. So that you'll hear that all the time. Kind of a cool one if you watch some of the highlight videos, a
Mm-hmm.
check side or a banana.
A banana is
It's a kick. It's the check
okay.
side or banana kick.
Okay.
Any guesses on what you think that might be?
Is that I'm guessing that's like when they're kind of near the boundary and they kind of curve a kick to make it through the goalpost.
Yep, that's
Ooh, there we
exactly right.
go.
Yep,
Point for
yep.
me.
Most in Victoria use the banana, but
Mm-hmm.
South Australia kind of there's enough announcers from South Australia that call it the check side.
Mm.
I'm not exactly sure why it's called that, but basically, yeah, it's where they're on an extreme angle and they use kind of centrifugal force kicking the ball and it curves.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen some that are extreme. I mean, I literally there's one comment one time I heard in a highlight. It says that defies physics.
Some of the
Oh,
I've seen some of those kicks you're talking about. They're wicked.
yep.
Or like either they curve it or the ones that are like this extreme angle, like they have like this tiny window that actually will make it in between the goalposts, and they nail it. Some of those kicks are crazy because
Mm-hmm.
the only way to score in Australian football is by kicking the ball. There are
Mm-hmm.
no like rugby. There's no touches. There's you can't run it through the goalposts. Everything has to be kicked.
Well, you can run it through, but that's
Okay.
normally what defenders do to call what they call a rush behind. It's basically
Okay.
it's giving up a point to
Mm-hmm.
get the ball because if you give up a behind, you get to kick the ball out
Mm-hmm.
from the little square that's in between the
Okay.
goalposts.
So it's
They
almost like a
can
safety.
basically it's kind of like it's you're giving up a point so then you can get the ball.
Mm-hmm.
So and now it's difficult because you're now having to go the entire length of the field to
Yeah.
score. So it's not it's one of those I'm giving up a point so I can get the ball, but I'm still taking a tiny bit of a risk because
Mm-hmm.
if my kick-in guy messes up and the other team marks it, now they get another shot at goal. This could be a 7-point
Mm-hmm.
situation where they get a point and now they get a goal because you make a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
So it is one of those where it's like you give up the point just because you want to get the
Mm-hmm.
footy back, but sometimes it kind of goes against. And then another one thing
Mm-hmm.
about the AFL, and I think we could talk a little bit more about the USAFL if you wanted to, is
Mm-hmm.
one unique rule that I love. It's called the father-son rule.
Father-son rule.
Yep. Players that have played 100 games for a club, their son, if he decides to play footy, can nominate to play for that club.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Basically the equivalency of is that take one of your favorite players that's played in the NFL and maybe
Mm-hmm.
they've played 50 NFL games.
Mm-hmm.
If their son, like say Emmett Smith's son from the Dallas Cowboys,
Yeah.
if his son got really, really good and wanted to play professional football, literally there is a rule that if he wanted to, he could play for the Dallas Cowboys if he wants to. That's his choice.
That's kind of cool.
And
So
if
it's
he
almost like
does,
Ken Griffey and Ken Griffey Jr.
basically, yep.
Yeah,
And then their
but
draft is
they can choose.
really, really funky
Okay.
because of that, you can
Mhm.
actually bid for players. And they also have basically academies, kind of like
Mhm.
professional soccer. In Europe, you have academies where you have kids that are 15, 16 years old.
Yeah.
They sign like an academy contract, and if they want, they can play. But what this is, you have an academy, and then if you want to play for your academy's pro team, so
Mhm.
say there's an academy kid who's for GWS, he can nominate GWS as the team he wants to go to. So then in the draft, if another team wants to draft him,
Mhm.
they can trade draft picks to get that by a point system.
Okay.
It is a mind. It literally it blows my
I
mind.
feel
It's
like we
basically,
have to take an hour to fully break that whole process down.
oh yeah, like the easiest way to say it would be is the first overall pick is 300 points. Each pick after that is a 1 point increment down. So
Okay.
2 is 299, so on and so forth. So then they could use a couple of picks later on. If it equals up to 300 and that number one kid is their
Mhm.
academy kid, they can trade those picks.
Mm.
Now they don't get those picks, but they get that kid.
Huh.
So it's a little imbalanced at times because
Yeah.
sometimes you can get one of like GWS really got a lot of really good players because they had their academy set up and then they got a lot of first round draft picks.
Mhm.
So you kind of picked one of those teams that you would think should be a flag contender because
Mhm.
they've got so many. The problem is they can't keep them all because they have a salary cap too, and their
Mhm.
their pay scale is way different than ours.
Okay.
The most expensive player in the entire AFL makes about 1.2 million total.
Hmm. Yeah,
That is the most expensive player.
that's not very much.
Yep.
Well, especially in terms after you see Patrick Mahomes signing a $500 million contract,
Yeah,
literally
13
five
years.
hundred times more than any contract that the AFL has ever had.
This is true, but you also got to look at it too. Is they've got about a third of the population.
Yeah,
They don't have the pure finances that the U.S.
it's
and
still
with
insane.
private
Hmm.
ownership, you've got a ton
Oh,
more money coming
of
through. I mean, you're
course.
talking you're talking 10, 15, 20 billion dollar,
Hmm.
where the AFL, the most max their profits out maybe $1 billion, and then that's spread out amongst the teams, and with no private owners, you have the kind of the club members
Hmm.
owning it, with the AFL kind of bankrolling it. It's a completely different animal. So
So
I
the
understand
athletes
why.
in the AFL, they're not mega like rich players like the ones in America could be.
Not normally.
Hmm.
A lot of them,
I mean,
like,
of course, they're still probably living comfortably, but they're
yeah,
not tens of millions of
depending on
dollars
where
a
they want to
year.
live too. Yeah, and depending on where they want to
Hmm.
live too. I
Yeah.
mean, some Melbourne, Sydney are a little bit more expensive than say Perth or Gold Coast. So
Hmm.
for those, a little bit. Plus, you also got to look at it too. Is it's kind of like New York, like the New York Yankees in baseball. I mean, if you're a New York Yankee and you're walking around, you've got paparazzi
Oh,
everywhere.
yeah, yeah.
That's basically Melbourne
Mm.
for all of the Melbourne teams. Where you go up to Sydney and Queensland, New South Wales, Sydney and Queensland, they're rugby nations. They don't give as much of a care to it. It
Hmm.
basically it'd be the equivalency of Tampa Bay to the New York Yankees. There's a completely different fishbowl, and
Yeah.
and you're not as focused. So
Hmm.
there have been players that have left for Sydney and GWS and Brisbane because they're tired of, they walk out, oh my gosh, it's this person, and then 10 million paparazzi from footy mad Melbourne are all over them. So
So they may not have the same financial power, but in terms of celebrity status, they are almost unrivaled.
yeah, let's just safe to say the Melbourne papers, about 8 pages of the 10 pages are about footy during the footy season.
Now,
Yeah, it's kind of nuts.
although I will say that I haven't actually read the newspaper for quite some time now, but when I did, because there was a point in time where I did, you see like a page per sport.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep, about
footy,
half their
like when I
newspaper.
was trying to like when I was talking with my Australian buddy, um, I was trying to get like a almost like an idea in my mind of just how popular, I guess, the AFL really is in Australia. So I was like, "What's it like compared to rugby?" And he was like, "It doesn't compare, mate." At least in most places. Like, Australians love their footy.
Hmm. Yep.
I
It's
guess
literally
Americans, we can say we love football. The whole country almost shuts down on Super Bowl Sunday, but it's our fan, like, we have really good fans for like
mhm.
sports here, but as a one sport that one country gets behind, there is almost nothing like footy unless you're talking soccer and some other European nations or like Brazil and stuff like that.
There's one thing that I love about Australians is they find any way to take a national holiday.
Mm-hmm.
The Friday before the grand final,
Mm-hmm.
no work. Nobody works. Not in Victoria, not in South Australia, not in Western Australia. It is a national holiday.
Now, what day
The Friday
does it take place on? Does it take place on a
normally
Saturday?
normally the
Normally.
grand final will be, at least here,
Mm-hmm.
it will be a Friday night. For
Mm-hmm.
them it's a Saturday afternoon. It's
Okay.
normally about a 1 p.m. ish Australian Eastern Standard Time. For
Mm-hmm.
here, like, you're in the mountain time zone, so the game would probably start normally about 10 o'clock, 10:35 your time, about 11:35 with me here in Iowa in the central
Mm-hmm.
time zone. So like people on the East Coast, they're getting it at midnight. The West Coast get it at 9. So the West Coast and you guys are kind of in prime
Oh
because it's
yeah.
not too late. You can stay up all the way and you don't
Oh,
have any
for
problems.
sure.
Normally, most of the USA teams have what we call grand final parties, and
Mm-hmm.
we try to get together for fundraising and kind of
Yeah.
just. So the East Coast teams, and even us in the Central, have problems because if we want to do it at a bar, the bars close at 2 o'clock and the game's not done yet.
So like,
Halftime is
so
like the
there's a
Super
time.
Bowl. It's like an hour and a half. So the game ends at like 3:30 in the
What
morning.
time of the year does this normally take place in?
The regular season for the AFL starts usually mid March, 14th, 21st, in that area, and
Mm-hmm.
it ends the last Saturday in September or the first Saturday in October, depending on how kind of the week the
So
how
we're
the
kind
weeks
of
go.
getting close. We're kind of getting
Yep.
close.
Well, the only problem is that with COVID they shut down for 6 weeks,
Oh,
so they're a little bit
okay.
behind. They did compress. Normally there's a 22 game schedule.
Mm-hmm.
This year it's only 17 because literally
Mm-hmm.
normally it's 22 where you play everybody once
Now,
and
are
then you
those
play a couple,
weekly games like
basically, yeah.
NFL?
Just like NFL, you play one game a week.
Okay.
Now, like I said, they compressed the schedule this year because
Mm-hmm.
of COVID and all
Yeah,
that stuff. So
like other
this year what
sports
they
like
did
baseball and
is
stuff like that.
this year they chopped off all the second games with anybody. So you literally will
Mm.
play everybody once.
Mm-hmm.
You play everybody in the league once, and then the top 8 teams make the playoffs,
Mm-hmm.
or the finals as they call them.
Okay.
Here's where things get interesting because their playoff format is kind of interesting. The top 4 teams, 4 plays 1, 2 plays 3. The loser of that is still alive. The winners go to the semifinals or the preliminary finals, as they
Mm-hmm.
call it in Australia.
Okay.
The 5, 8, 6, 7 games is an elimination game. You lose, you're out.
Wow.
The winners of those games then
Uh-huh.
play the losers of the 1, 4, 2, 3.
Uh-huh.
The winners of those games then flip sides of the bracket to the opposite side.
Uh-huh.
That way 4 and 1 don't play each other again.
Yeah.
So basically you actually could have the equivalent of if 3 beat 2 and then 2 beats the elimination game, 1 and 2 could play in the semifinals.
Now, I kind of like that. I
It
really do
is
like that format.
insane.
Well, it's
Yep,
because
it is.
if you just make the top four, so in the AFL, they're not broken into divisions or conferences, are they?
Nope.
They're just
One league.
one big league. So you take
Mhm.
the top 8 of those, but it rewards you if you get top 4. You can lose
You
a
can
game,
lose a game and
but
still win the whole thing. Yep.
I kind of like that. And then
But
with
but the other bad part is
Bad part.
that you can also go out in 2 consecutive games.
mm,
Because if you lose the first one and then you
Mhm.
lose against the elimination team that's won, you're out.
and that would be a little embarrassing too.
And it's happened.
I'm sure it
has
has.
happened. Oh yeah,
Sure it has.
in the last couple of years, at least one team has what they call what is the 2 and out.
Mm.
Yep, or
Yeah,
that they lost both games.
that has to hurt. That's like getting swept in the first round. I guess we can compare it to that. Ooh,
Yep.
and then So how does like standings work in leagues like the MLB, in NFL and NBA? It's all just based on wins and losses, or like
Mhm.
in the NHL, you get 2 points for a win, 1 point for overtime loss, and it's whoever has the most points at the end of
Mhm.
the season. So how does the AFL do their standings?
It's kind of a combination of both. There
Mm,
there is a point system.
okay.
Um, a win is 4 points.
Mm-hmm.
A draw, which does not happen often, but it does happen, where you literally there is no overtime in AFL. If you get
Mm-hmm.
all 4 quarters, both teams are on
They
86
four
points.
15-minute quarters.
Yeah, basically.
And the scoring is
Normally,
crazy because, like, just sorry to interrupt you real quick, but the scoring
no,
is
no, you're
crazy
good.
because it's like a high scoring NFL game we'll see like in the 40s. If
Mhm.
each team's only score 40 points in the AFL, that's a pretty bad game, you could say, for them.
It's a defensive game depending
Defensive.
on how you
Okay.
see it. And sometimes I've seen games played
Mhm.
in monsoons, basically. So it happens.
Yeah.
And one time I watched a game between Sydney and Gold Coast, and
Mhm.
it was literally monsoon season. It
That's
never stopped raining the
crazy.
entire game. One person kicked the ball, it went 10 meters, hit a puddle, and stopped. So it happens.
Yeah,
So
but typically you'll
basically,
probably see like in the 80s, for points.
yeah, about the
Sometimes break 100.
all
Mm.
I've seen games that were 110 to 95. It just depends on how good the defenses are
Mhm.
and how good the goal kicking is.
So can we say
Uh,
the to give it something to compare it to, maybe like a NBA score, maybe
Basically, a,
around
a little
around
bit,
there.
little bit lower, a little bit lower, a little bit lower, just
Okay.
because of the fact that the ball does move
Hmm.
pretty quickly. I mean, most of these guys, I mean, literally the equivalency I've heard in a video is these guys could kick balls as accurately as NFL quarterbacks can throw them. That's how good some of these guys can fit
Yeah,
tight
those
windows
guys are
and hit
crazy.
a guy right on the chest. I mean,
And why do
there's
you
one
think NFL teams are recruiting Australian football players to go punt for them now?
one. It's because of the drop. The drop punch is much more accurate when it
Hmm.
comes to kicking. The torpedo, which is what most NFL punters do, you're
Hmm.
using the spiral effect.
Yeah.
But the drop punt, where you're dropping it vertically and you're
Hmm.
kicking the thicker part of the ball,
Hmm.
it's much easier to manipulate where you want it.
Hmm.
So that's why you're starting to see a lot of kickers coming from
Hmm.
Australia, because their AFL is kind of the game. I mean,
Hmm.
everybody plays it. I mean, what we would consider baseball, playing catch with your dad, for
Everyone.
them it's kicking the footy.
And the
For
crazy thing
them it's
about kicking is that it's not like in the NFL where you have one or two guys that are specialists in that. That's all they do. In the
mm-hmm,
AFL, in footy, everyone has to be good at kicking.
mm-hmm.
And that's why
And the
like
best
the NFL doesn't have as much, but the college a lot of times they've been adopting the rollout kicks, so they get
mm-hmm,
more of a balance to it. That's what you see in footy a lot.
mm-hmm. And that's kind of it too. And it's so much easier to direct because you're, like I said, you're kicking the bigger part of the ball. But
Hmm.
the biggest thing with them is that, and the other kind of the other nice thing about sport is you don't have to be like in the NBA. You kind of got to be tall to play. I
Yeah.
mean, if you're shorter, it's a lot harder to play.
Hmm.
In the AFL, if you're shorter, it sometimes is a good thing, because what you can do is, instead of jumping up for a specky mark, you can stay down and get what calls a crumb. Like if nobody can catch it and the ball
Hmm.
drops down, hey, you can run, grab it. You can use your little legs to run real fast, and you can kick goals.
Yeah.
I mean, so the kind of the nice thing about the game is that there is no set standard of what's like a typical. I
Mm.
mean, there are guys running around now in the league that are 5'5", and then you've got guys that are 6'6", 6'7", playing, and it's everything in between. You've got guys like Mad Jack Daw, who's a Sudanese thing. He literally looks like he's taken out of granite. I mean, he is like, I mean, he looks like an NFL player as an
Like a
Aussie ruler.
linebacker.
Oh yeah, he looks like an NFL player
Uh
that
huh.
plays an Aussie rules. I mean, he has big arms, strong chest, and big guy, and he's just as fast as some of them. And then you've got guys like Tommy Papley, who plays for Sydney, who's like 5'7", 145 pounds, soaking wet,
Hmm.
but he's quick as a hiccup and can kick anything. And that's kind of the good thing about the game, is that there is no set standard of player
Yeah.
when it comes to size and weight and everything like that. So it really is kind of this
That's super cool.
amalgamation of
Hmm.
like, I'm not a small guy. I mean,
Hmm.
I'm rather big guy, but when I played, I mean, I could go and play full forward to where I'm
Yeah.
kicking the goals, because I took a lot of time to learn how to kick.
Hmm.
So it's kind of one of those where it's like, even with the USA clubs, it's like we're not at the elite level of physicality or conditioning.
Yeah.
There are a lot of guys that are really good athletes that play this game, but there's guys like me, they're average Joe, that got a few extra pounds on him. And I'm not going to lie, I do. That go out there and they have a kick because it's a fun game to play. And the
Yeah.
best part is that you get a lot of friends. Like, especially from my club, is we started in 2009.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? There are still guys on the team now that are playing that were there when I started,
Wow.
that I'm coaching now, that I know. And we've got guys that are 40 years old. We've got guys that are 25.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a little bit of everything. I mean, that's kind of the best thing about the USAFL is there is no standard for age group. There
Nope.
isn't.
Well,
There's 18-year-olds,
Mm-hmm.
there's 50-year-olds, there's older guys. I mean, there's guys that have been playing there's for the last 22 years, ever since it started. We've got
I'm
women
impressed.
that play.
Yeah, you
We've
guys
got
have
women
women's
that
leagues.
play. Yep.
Yep.
We've got women's teams throughout the country. In fact, we have 4 or 5 girls. We're kind of starting this slowly, a women's program here in Des Moines.
Okay.
That was really kick-started by Emily, who was kind of our first one. And this last year, a couple of girlfriends and wives. You'll get girlfriends, wives, significant others that they'll come and join. And the best part is that there's no issues. I mean, our girls train with our guys, and our guys are doing everything they can to help the girls get better. Like, I think our girls played better this year because our guys were so willing to help train them and
That's
help teach them.
phenomenal. Yeah.
And that's kind of the best thing about it is we're all what we call it, using the Aussie term, mates. We're all mates. We've become lifelong friends. We've got people that have been in their weddings. I had a wedding reception, and half the Roosters showed up to my wedding reception because that's just the way we were.
That's
So
the
that's
best
kind of the
part about
coolest thing
any
about it.
sports is crazy, but like especially just the Australian football or footy fans, they're they're a special group. I just tweeted something small. I mean, you guys interacted with it, but people really kind of retweeted that, interacted with that, and stuff like that. So that's partly why I was so happy to have this conversation, because I would love to get into the I guess the fan base of footy, because it's arguably one of the best ones in the world, without the dedication of the fans and stuff like that. And so let's just focus on the USAFL real quick.
Sure.
So it's, as you mentioned earlier, located everywhere. So what are the best places to find this, or how to get involved with the USAFL?
Well, one of the best places to go is usafl.com. That has pretty much everything. If you want to find and see if you have a team close to you, they've got a club list, and that's got every single team in the entire country, including the developmental clubs, and where they are, and contacts. That almost all the teams are on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Many of them have websites. So, and we are always looking out for new people, because with this sport being sometimes as physical as it is, it's not easy to play this sport for a long period of time. So we are constantly looking for new people. We are trying to spread the sport just as much as the guys in Australia are. And the one thing that I love about it is the fact is there is a mateship amongst all of us. Like, I live in Des Moines, but I can't tell you how many guys I have helped through the Twitter find teams in their area. Like, the one kid I found in Texas is now going to join the Dallas Dingoes when we get back up and running.
Yes.
Yep. The Dallas Dingoes, one of my favorite ones, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, the Fort Lauderdale Fighting Squids.
The Fighting Squids. Yes.
Yep.
You know, Seattle just got their
Squids,
hockey team. They got the Kraken, but they have nothing on the Fighting Squids. I love it. I love it.
In fact, you said you're in Boise.
Boise,
correct?
you showed me, it was the Boise Startup League, right? There's one that's a little
I think
small right now.
Boise's trying to get a club going. I know there's one in Utah, the Warsaw Warhawks. There is the
That's
Seattle
a badass
Grizzlies.
name. The Warsaw Warhawks. That's a good one.
They're somewhere. I think they're in Salt Lake City. I think they're
Okay.
kind of one of the development clubs. The Seattle Grizzlies in Seattle, and the Portland Steelheads are close to you, so they're clubs to reach out to. The Grizz are a good bunch. I got to know many of them this last Nationals. We were there for a while. We were going to play with them in our Div 4 and kind of nuttiness. But I mean, you've got teams in Sacramento, LA,
I have a
Orange
pretty good few
County.
based in the Sacramento, back where I originally was from. Can we shout the Sacramento team?
Sacramento Suns, they are a good bunch of guys back. They helped us this last year at national tournament finish second in Division Four. We combined with them,
Okay.
the Moines Roosters and Sacramento Suns combined, and we finished second in our division in Division Four at this last year's national tournament, which was located in Florida in Sarasota. And then normally, COVID notwithstanding, every
Everything with
year,
asterisks, like we say.
yeah, I know. Every year, normally around the first or second weekend in October, we have the national tournament, and it's hosted kind of everywhere. Kind of depends on it. This year was supposed to be in California. Unfortunately, that has been canceled due to COVID, which kind of stinks.
The season has, right? I mean,
well, the season not completely. There's still some clubs that are trying to train, and there may be a scratch match here, but officially, yeah, pretty much. Unfortunately, the season is lost, but hopefully, crossing our fingers that next year all of this has been taken care of. The national tournament will be usually that second week in October. The USAFL will put out where it's at. They try to put it out at least 6 months in advance, just so everybody, because the biggest thing is for a lot of us, it's travel and everything is on our dime. I mean,
yeah,
this is a glorified rec league.
Yeah,
and I don't want to say beer league. That kind of gives a bad connotation.
Yeah, it's a rec league.
Australians,
you guys are
beer.
You guys have been around. But like I was so thankful to have this conversation because I wanted to get into AFL for a while on my show now. Which thank you very much, Coach Hess, for listening in and giving me a lot of good stuff about that. Of course, you watch the podcast anywhere, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, anywhere else you get your podcast. Let me get my plug in real quick, www.thefourthandlong.com.
I gotta check out that website. You guys said you had some merch. I may have to check that out. And it sounded pretty cool. I heard you had face masks. I was
we do have face masks.
Podcast.
We do have face masks.
Definitely have to check that out. But
Coach Hess, you're the man.
I work kind of data entry. So for me, I'm listening to podcasts all the time. That's kind of like if you need any kind of podcast, both American based and USA,
you're the man.
Reach out to me.
Oh yeah.
I know there's several really good ones. Another person, if you wanted to talk a little bit more in depth about the USAFL, reach out to the USAFL 1997. That's run by Brian Barish.
And
he is the media director for the league.
Yep.
And he is a very, very good interview. Great guy out of Philadelphia.
Awesome. Well, we're supposed to get something done soon. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
He is worth it. He is so worth it. And he has his own podcast that's kind of set up by the USAFL called the Marks and Stripes podcast.
Marks and Stripes.
And that he interviews different people from around the country, and he'll get some Australians, some USA's like kind of going off the women is we actually had the first ever USAFL based player play in the AFLW this year. In Danny Marshall, who plays for the Western Bulldogs women's team.
Okay. Wow. So you guys are starting to get into it. That's exactly what I would love to see. I'm so happy to have you on because we can get this going, kind of help promote me a little bit, but it's like a help, you scratch my back, I scratch yours. A lovely partnership is in the making between Fourth and Long and the USAFL. And honestly, I'm super excited about this because you guys, I'm so thankful that you guys reached out to me. The beautiful Des Moines Rooster, Twitter account ran by yours truly. Also has his own personal, but we have the USAFL 1997. Plenty of places to reach out. Also, just follow the normal AFL Twitter account as well. They're putting out like a lot of the fans. We can't watch it. Not everyone is dedicated as you. Gets up at 2:30 in the morning to watch some footy. I do my best to stay up till about 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, and watch what I can when it's on Fox. But at the very least, I watch all the highlights that the AFL posts, which is also a lot of fun.
And that's really good too, because you kind of see some of the really good punts. But if you do go on USAFL.com, they have the connection to just the Watch AFL app, which is the app I told you kind of with the membership.
Yeah.
You can just buy that. If you're not interested in supporting a team, like if you just want to watch footy, you can actually get just the package that's that. And like I said, every game is on demand, so you can watch it anytime. You don't have to worry about commercials.
Awesome.
But the good thing is when you watch it live, you get Australian commercials, which are awesome.
Two of my favorite
Some of
commercials
them
in the world.
are comedy.
Two of my favorite. I love the Japanese commercials because
Mm-hmm.
I honestly almost never know what product they're advertising for, but I'm entertained. In Australian commercials, two of the best ones. They blow American commercials out of the water, bar none. I love it.
And one tip: if you're ever in Australia
Mm-hmm.
and you hear somebody talking about Macca's, that's McDonald's.
Yes, I've learned some of that because I follow some Australian and Kiwi people. I've started to pick it up a little bit. Macca's.
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 MACCA.
There's no
Macca's.
R. No R.
Macca's.
It's
Yep.
Macca's.
Yep, it's Macca's.
I love it.
And the other thing too, if you do decide to go down the wormhole of Twitter,
Okay.
and you make and I try to warn people about this. If you go, AFL fans, who should I support?
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna warn you right now. Half of Australia will contact you. And every single one of them have a specific reason why.
Well,
They're going to tell you to support their club.
I know exactly what I'm doing.
Comedy.
I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm gonna have Australia fighting
awesome.
over each other in the Twitter replies, huh?
And they're quite interesting. I actually one time had like 15 retweets because of that, because somebody put out AFL. Who should I support?
Yep.
And I think it might have even been the Roosters page. I went, just gonna tell you, half of Australia is going to try to contact you to get you to support their club. Just warning you.
That's awesome.
It is gold, because I mean, some of them will use GIFs, some of them will they'll use like the team club songs, and that's another thing too. Real quick, if you listen to the club songs, you'd be surprised how many of them are old school songs that we've heard all the time. St. Kilda, the Saints Go Marching On.
Oh.
Open the Saints Go Marching In.
Yeah.
That's their club song.
Okay.
If you listen to Sydney, the Sydney Swans, it's the Notre Dame fight song.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Hawthorne Hawks, Yankee Doodle Dandy.
Okay.
Yep. Yankee Doodle Dandy. North Melbourne, if you know any choral music, it is the Battle Hymn of the Republic.
Wow. That.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Wow. That's really cool.
Many of them are just their old school songs that have just been adapted with words. And the best part about it is that after every game when they win, they sing the song.
Dude, that's I love a good fight song. Love it in college, high school. It's so good. But once again, let's just plug USAFL.com. There's AFL.au, the USAFL 1997, Twitter, Instagram. The Des Moines, Iowa team specifically is
Des Moines Roosters on Facebook. It's DM Roosters Footy on Twitter. We also have an Instagram, Des Moines Roosters on Instagram. And if you are ever in Des Moines and want to learn footy, please reach out. We have an open door policy. If you were ever in town and want to learn the game of footy, reach out. We'll let you know when trainings are. The boys and the girls are always interested in helping anybody out. And I've said this to any USAFL player and any American. If you're in Des Moines and want to learn footy, come out and see us. We are more than willing to help. We're all crossing our fingers that this COVID thing gets taken care of as soon as possible. And if you ever find yourself in Des Moines, sir, you're more than welcome to join us.
Well, I very appreciate that. And then can we say that kind of share the same sentiment to almost any other club around the country?
Oh, yeah. Almost all the clubs are on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all of them. They're super nice. All the people, I mean, we really are a community. We kind of look out for each other. Like I said, I send people to teams anytime I can. So almost all the teams that I have ever talked to, they all have an open door policy. I've said that. All the coaches that I've talked to have said that if you're in town, even if a Dallas Dingoes player is somehow in Chicago and Chicago's training, well, they'll let them train with them.
Yeah.
It's kind of a mateship because we all love the sport so much.
It's all about growing this beautiful sport, man. Right?
Oh yeah.
Especially with a smaller team, like no offense to the league, the USFL is not huge, per se, But it's all about growing the league, growing the love for the sport, and growing almost the visibility of it. Because not a lot of people just don't even know it's there. But as soon as I find it's there, I am sucked in. So
Hmm.
if I can just get the name out and then have 1 to 2 people talk about it, they talk to their friends about it. It's just a good chain reaction, and it's all for the love of the game of footy.
Yep. And who knows? Maybe next year at nationals, you could do a podcast and meet some of the other teams at USAFL nationals.
And who
Just
knows?
an
You
idea to
might
put
not
in
even
your
have to
head.
do a podcast. I might be there in person. Who knows?
Who knows? Maybe you can even strap on the boots and play a game yourself.
You know, after a couple surgeries, my mom wouldn't be too happy, but at the same time, might be worth it.
We can always have a little fun. We'll stick you up. We can stick you up at full forward. There'll be a little less contact.
Oh, okay. Let's do that. Let's cater to the cripple. I'm okay with
Yeah,
that.
it happens. Trust me. We've got 40 and 50-year-old guys that play, and they just kind of they're out there. They're just having fun playing the game.
I
So
love it. Well, Coach Hess, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. We got a lot of good education on the Australian footy, the AFL, and the USFL. We all know where to find it now, and for sure, this is not the last time we are going to talk, without a
sure,
doubt.
open door. If you guys ever want to talk about the AFL finals, give me a ring. Let me know. I'd be more than willing to break down kind of what teams are hot, what teams are not, what teams look good, and all that. So, you
Ooh,
guys
do
ever
I
need any
hear the
AFL?
AFL corner with Coach Hess?
I I've been told by my wife I should actually start a
Ooh.
podcast. So, but
Oh
I don't
well, as
know.
long as
It,
you're not
it's it's a
competing with
very fun
me,
one.
we'll be all good.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. But it'll be a lot of fun. But this has been a pleasure. I'm glad you reached out. It's been awesome.
Thank
But
you for
like I
reaching
said,
out, man. Thank you.
not a problem. Not a
So
problem at
happy.
all.
So
But
happy.
if you want on fourth and long, you want an Australian rules correspondent. I'm your guy if you want it.
I
So
think we got our guy. I think we got our guy.
mutual love.